three things that we need to know in the bond line formula. If the first one, if the atom is not carbon or hydrogen, that atom need to be written out. Okay, for example, this one in the olden days, in the 18th century, or even during the Civil War, they were using this as a anesthetic. If a soldier gets injured or has a bullet wound and they need to operate on that soldier, the first thing that they do is they let the soldier inhale this one as an anesthetic. Okay, unfortunately, this one is very flammable. So while they're operating the wound, sometimes because they're using candle as a source of light during night operations, unfortunately, this one is very flammable. So sometimes the surgery room or the operating room ends up catching fire because of the flammable nature of chloroethane. So they stopped using it, but in the olden days they used this as a anesthetic until they figure out, hey, this is more trouble than it's worth because it's quite flammable and it's burning up the operating room while they were doing the operations. So in the representation, bond line representation of chloroethane, it looks like this. This is your carbon with 3 hydrogens. This is your carbon with 2 hydrogens. This is connected to a carbon and a chlorine. The end of this line doesn't represent a carbon atom. It represents it's connected to a chlorine. This carbon is the carbon with 3 hydrogens. This carbon is the C carbon with 2 hydrogens connected to a carbon and connected to a chlorine. Okay, so if you have an atom that's not carbon or hydrogen, that atom needs to be written out. Okay, so number 2, it says if the hydrogen is not connected to a carbon, but some other atom, that hydrogen has to be written out. Okay, so if you have a hydrogen and it's not connected to a carbon but some other atom, that hydrogen has to be written out. For example, in the case of ethanol, sometimes they call this ethyl alcohol. Notice that one of the hydrogen is now connected to an oxygen. So when you draw the bond line representation of this one, that hydrogen, because it's connected to a non-carbon atom, has to be now shown as part of the bond line structure. How does this represent the ethanol? This is your carbon that's connected to a 1 carbon neighbor, so the implication is it has 3 hydrogens. This one is the middle carbon. It has 2 hydrogens because it's connected to a carbon and an oxygen. Okay, so this is the bond line representation of ethanol. And finally, the other one is that it says use